welcome to the Talking Timelines podcast. We are four women with 4 points of view and 4 accents with one common goal: to share insights and information about what's going on in the world from a higher consciousness perspective. No BS, no PC, just lots of ideas that you won't hear on mainstream media. We chat, we laugh, and most of all, we shed and share light. Join us each week as we talk timelines.
Hello everyone, welcome to Talking Timelines episode 10, and today we're going to be touching on some current affairs stuff and some stuff about sovereignty and the straw man if you haven't come across that, and we'll just see where the conversation leads us today. Today I've got Susan and Lisa with me. Hi guys, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. What do we know about the straw man? How would you describe it, Lisa?
I would describe it as just a way to control us in the most elaborate way that, we're born into, and our parents have complied in getting us a social insurance number, birth certificate, in the States, social security number, and, in the UK, what is it?
Yeah, we have national insurance number, it's called.
And a way that they can collect taxes from us. So it's that way. So it's, as you know, when you apply for a job or a bank account, you're asked for this information on anything that you have to put an application in for. But the thing is that the reality of what it is I think that it's been said that what we have a value of 200,000, that's our value, is our 200,000, and we're traded on the stock exchange. And, we don't see any of that money. We're very valuable until we get to a certain age as an elder and cannot, contribute more. That's when we're deemed useless eaters, actually. And so there's a woman that I shared with you, Janine, before. Her name is Bibi Bacchus. And many people maybe who have, that are, listen to this recording, or maybe they have heard of her. I feel that information is presented to us once we become curious, and then you start to kind of investigate, right? And so what happened with her is at the age of 52, something like around that age, she was put in jail for 8 years. And the reason why she was put in jail is because she was a real estate agent in Florida, and she was helping people to get homes. And she's very successful at it. One day the IRS had knocked on her door and said, we want you to testify against one of your clients. And she refused to do that.
Okay.
And after that, she was put into jail for 8 years. And then for the first 6 months, she cried her eyes out every day. What the heck's happening, right? We would probably do the same. And then afterwards, with her and her family, they researched everything on how to become sovereign and free and away from this type of prosecution. It's stunning. And so what we can do, Janine, if you think it's right, is we can put a couple links below. People can listen to a couple of her interviews, and it could set people on the path. I know she had a website because she basically educates us on the Uniform Criminal Code, UCC. And a lot of people don't know what that is. I didn't know what it was either. And so there was, she was actually, eventually she was deported from the United States. So she's in the UK. And she's very, very smart on this topic. So whenever utility companies or political leaders or that type of thing start to bother her in the UK, she just writes a simple letter and puts them in their place because she knows basically our rights. And it's really, really stunning. So when she was actually deported, one of the ladies was asking for her consent somewhere. And she basically had written, through her family's help, a 9-page letter that went to that agent. And maybe it was a lawyer. You'll have to watch the interview. And basically said that if you do not leave me alone, not so many words, then I will be taking all your assets, obligated to all your assets and your pension. So this person took it to a lawyer and took it to a judge. And the lawyer didn't know anything about it. Most lawyers don't. Okay, maritime law. And then when it went to a judge, the judge confirmed it. And so that lawyer had said to her, whatever you're doing, you're on the right path. And so, so she became sovereign, and now then she was teaching other people. I do know that she has retired because I've been to her website. I would love to really dig in and learn that and help other people too. So I'm just trying to find a good contact that I can learn from and see some of her material. She is in the process of writing a book. So we'll see what happens there, but we'll keep you updated.
Can you just spell her name for the listeners at home? Do you know how to spell it?
Yeah. Okay. So Bibi Bacchus, and you could go and look on YouTube and you'll see a couple probably interviews there. And her name is Bibi, Bibi Bacchus, Bacchus.
Okay. So if you send me the links, Lisa, I'll put them underneath this podcast on our YouTube channel, because we can't put them on Podbean. But any links, guys at home, I do save them on our YouTube channel. So if you're not watching us on YouTube, you're missing out on the links to buy Lisa's products and to connect with Laura and I with our, therapeutic sessions and my products and online courses. So to me, the straw man thing is your birth certificate basically stops you being a real, natural, living person and you become a corporate entity. That's my understanding of it. And that's why, when we get letters coming through, anything to do with government, driving license, bills, stuff like that, your surname is shown in capital letters. That's your straw man name. It's not your living human being name. And these things make a big difference. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube about if you get taken to court, that you can, not end up being prosecuted if you know about this stuff, because you go to court, your straw man name comes under the maritime law and the admiralty law and the judicial system as it stands. And if you go to court and call yourself, I would be Janine of the family Regan-Sinclair, the real living person, there's something about the straw man declares you dead at sea or something. That's admiralty law, isn't it?
Yeah, that's marine law, admiralty
Maritime.
law, same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it basically, you're considered a corpse that they can do whatever they want with.
That's pretty good way to say it. And so
Yeah.
they could do whatever they want with. So even if you go to court and you have a good case, it depends on the judge and what they want to do with you, and pretty much put us in our place when we are all, in fact, born sovereign.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that have been fighting against it. I remember about 10 years ago in the UK, I knew somebody there was an online debt relief project, and it was called getoutofdebtfree.org or something like that. And there was a guy on there teaching people how to write off debts by basically, writing to, let's say you had credit card debt, you write to the bank and say, I'll happily pay this 10 grand I owe you if you can provide me with the evidence that I borrowed it in the first place. And the evidence is the wet signature that you signed the form with. Well, they don't keep them, they get shredded. So they can't actually prove to the person that they, actually borrowed the 10,000 in the first place. So then there's a process that they were teaching people to go through. And it was a really interesting process that worked. And the website itself, people would write back, and it was something like £12 million had been written off using this technique. And within, I would say, probably a year, the government had taken over that website. So now it's a government website to help you, get out of debt, which is not the same at all. They've actually taken the domain name of that website off the person that was doing it. They took it off them. So there's a lot of stuff out there, guys, like income taxes, voluntary contribution. It's, there's information on YouTube about that as well. I remember watching a video years ago of an American woman who actually worked for the IRS. And she made a video saying she offered $50,000 to anyone who could provide legal evidence that you have to pay, a law that you have to pay income tax, and they don't exist. There isn't a law. It was a voluntary contribution used during the war to get taxes to fund the war, and it's still funding the war. People think it's going to schools and roads and all that stuff. If you do your homework, do your research, it's not. If you watch there's a program on Tubi called While We Are Left to Die. It's a whole series of episodes on the deep state and how the taxes of the American people have been taken and used to build nuclear fallout bunkers for the global elites and the government. They call it continuity of government. Trillions and trillions of dollars have been spent to protect the elites while they're, the planet's being trashed and all this other stuff's going on. People need to know what's going on. The one thing I disagree with in it, and before I make this statement, I'm not a political person, I'm apolitical, always have been. They're trying to make out that Mr. T is the head of the cabal in it. And we all know that's not the case at all. The situation going on there, and there's a lot of the propaganda going through the media against him is unbelievable, especially in Canada. Like, people hate the man. I don't get how people can be so full of venom for someone because someone on the news said this. Like, how they can muster up so much hate. The way I see it is he's gone into a nest of vipers to clean it up. Because if you want to bring down an empire, and I can't remember where I read this, if you bring an empire down from the outside, it's going to restructure itself. If you want to bring down an empire, which is what this is about, it has to be done from the inside. So somebody had to go on the inside who wasn't working for the cabal, and wasn't one of their puppets. And I believe that that's what, Mr. T is. He's going in to clean up. I don't care what people say about his womanizing and his business activities and blah, blah, blah. I don't think anyone out there is perfect.
No, they, and on that note, Janine, just the fact of these so-called figures that are saying he's Putin's puppet, he's this and that, from the debates way back, like in 2016 and things like that. It's like you see it for what it is right in front of us. If they're linking him to Putin and they're so against Putin, what does Putin know about this royalty, these elites, everything like that? And so Trump's facing that same wrath.
Yeah.
T is facing that same wrath.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on that basically, if it's on the news, it's lies. People need to realize that the shadow aspect of the elites on this planet that have been poisoning the water, the air, the food, everything that's making people sick, because that's a business. If it's on the news, believe the opposite to what you're hearing on the news, because they own the news, they own all the media, they own all the newspapers. It's all mind control, guys. All of it. It's planting seeds and turning you against people that are trying to make a difference for the good of the people. What is the general consensus down in your the South of America where you are, Susan?
Well, I guess it determines what side you're on. For myself, I'm ecstatic because they're talking about people that make under $150,000 will not have to pay income tax whatsoever. And this U.S. aid money is being, halted. And I'm saying there's probably good U.S. aid money that does go out, but the majority of the money that does go out is just a money laundering scam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just absolutely ridiculous stuff. Like, we're sending money to, I don't know, some South American country, like $300,000 to write a book on transgender.
Yeah.
Why are we sending money to another country to write a book about transgender? It's crazy stuff that's going out. So, for me to be someone who has grown up here, I keep myself adverse about politics, but just to see the wasteful spending and how senators and congressmen make $185,000 a year, but once they retire, they're worth 10 and $20 million.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're all doing insider trading, which is illegal, but they all get away with it. So to see all of that stuff crumbling and to have someone speak, they're bringing sovereignty back to the people. The majority of the Americans, it's going to affect them in a good way instead of the 1% that hold the wealth and hoard it to some degree. And it's never enough. There's just more money, more money, more money, more money. And they tax us to death. It's just taxes on new goods, taxes on used goods, just property taxes, your car taxes. It's ridiculous. You know, you're taxed, you get a tax for your phone bill, you get a tax for your cable bill, you get taxed on your electricity. It's just, you know, I'm glad to see that, you know, things are turning around, and someone's spearheading it up and is bringing everything back to the people. And that's where our Constitution was originated. It was originated. It was for the people, to protect the people, and we've gotten so far away from that
Yeah.
that I'm ecstatic, and I'm ecstatic to see that this is going to domino throughout our entire world,
Yeah.
you know. So it's not going to just affect Americans, it's going to affect Canadians, it's going to Europeans, you know, England, South America, Africa, you know,
Yeah.
we're all in, you know, we're all going to gold back currency, which we haven't been, you know, we haven't. I mean, they're talking about going into Fort Knox, where our gold is supposed to be kept for the United States.
Mm.
And there's a lot of pushback on that because they think that, well, they probably already know. That's why they're saying let's go to Fort Knox and let's see the gold, because
And
they
it's
know
not
there's no
that.
gold there because it's all been stolen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, you know, they're opening up and they're letting the people know what has really been going on. And not only just in the United States, but within our world, you know, for the 1% naughty people that want to control everything.
Yeah. I
You
remember when I first came to Canada, I was hearing about $12 trillion worth of gold had been rediscovered in Uganda. And then I heard about a nurse here that had been given 600,000 Canadian dollars to go to Uganda and study the stigma of HIV and AIDS in children in school in Uganda. That just didn't seem right. Why would you want to spend 600,000 on
Mhm.
studying stigma on HIV in another country when you've got your own people lying in the streets at minus 30 degrees, minus 40 degrees temperatures in the winter? I can't understand it. To me, that just seemed like a massive money laundering
You
thing.
bang on, you nailed it. Fentanyl money laundering. Yeah.
Yeah. It was a bit of a coincidence that that money was going there when all that gold would be found there. Maybe it was sent to buy gold. Who knows? You never know what it was sent for, but it just didn't make sense to me. This is all coming out now. More and more information is being released, and these people think they get away with it, but we all know, you know, what goes around comes around. Nobody gets away with anything. The karma always comes back, and I think the world is looking at this massive wave of karmic consequences
For
that's going to
sure.
be hitting the elites and the puppets of the elites. It baffles me how easily people are manipulated by watching the media these days. It really does. And it's like when you try to talk to them, there's a brick wall there. It's like, no, it was on the news at 6 o'clock or whatever. You know, so it must be true. It shocks me because my body reacts to lies. There's a tightening between my heart and my gut when I hear a lie, and that comes from anywhere, any kind of lie. My body responds to it and reacts to it.
You had mentioned something earlier in this conversation about the media. And, you know, and in some degree, that also eventually will turn itself around, because even if you look up the person of the year, the 2024 person of the year through Time Magazine,
Mm-hmm.
is none other than the man of the hour, Mr.
Yeah.
T, which and that is to show us, like, there's a lot of stuff that, because the New York Times was completely anti Mr. T, okay? But here lately, you know, they've been saying things that they wouldn't ever really report on, and it was favorable to Mr. T. So a lot of those institutions are being gone through. And I don't, you know, I don't want to say completely dismantled, but a lot of people have resigned. And
Yeah.
so I don't want to say taking over, but there has to be a fairness. It can't just all go one way. There has to be a balance in news reporting.
Yeah.
Because the man does, I mean, you can't, the man has done some great stuff for humanity, for us, and as Americans in the US. He's fought hard for us, and that's not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, since 2015, 16, before the elections even started, I mean, they just ruthlessly hammered that man.
Yeah.
But he's a warrior.
Well, he's certainly tough, and if he's a danger to the bad people out there, but a lot of people
Right.
think he is the bad person.
Yeah.
This is the thing, no one's perfect. But when I went on to something the other day and shared a comment about mass psychosis through propaganda, through the media, and that, you know, people needed to be aware of it. And they were just saying that I was delusional. And somebody actually called me a Putin, Elon, Trump puppet because I believe that the media are lying to us. That's how aggressive people are. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Well, what was the dossier back in 2016? The dossier, the Putin dossier, and all that ended up being complete lies about Trump. And it was proved, it was proved to have been, people went to jail over it. But, you don't really hear the media reporting on that the way that it was all a lie.
Yeah,
So,
like, like that whole thing was fake. And
Mhm,
the thing is that the people that pushed on it, all of them included, they knew that it was fake.
mhm,
There's got to be consequences for that. I believe that they will come. There cannot be no consequences for that with what
mhm,
went down for like years long, right?
mhm.
yeah. And it's coming. It is coming. That, you know, the change is upon us. And what people at home need to realize is, in order to speed up, manufacture this change, it's up to us. It's not, you know, nobody else can do it for us. We need to release from our systems our bigotry, our racism, our sexism, everything that's come down our ancestral lineage is in our consciousness, and that's what projecting our reality. When I talk to people and they start bad mouthing someone else, I teach them about the law of projection. Do you understand that what you see in other people is a projection of you, the light and the dark? So if you're going, oh, he's this, he's that, and there's aggression, there's a charge in it, that's in your system. If you're seeing a misogynist, there's a misogynist imprint in your system that may be, you know, you've inherited down your ancestral lineage or something like that. People need to understand that the world around us is a mirror of our own shadow, our own darkness, and take responsibility for it. Then you're in control. It's like, okay, so what am I projecting into reality? What part of me is creating this negativity? And learn how to heal it. And one of the easiest ways to do it is sun gazing. I've said it before.
Mhm.
You go and sit. If you're an early riser, sunrise to an hour afterwards, you can sit and stare at the sun, and you can ask your higher consciousness, visualize the sun coming into your body, and ask to burn out and neutralize the anger in your system, or the misogyny in your system, or the racism in your system, or anything else, you know, the jealousy, envy, unforgiveness, anything you think is in your system. And you can do the same for an hour before sunset up to sunset as well. It's the easiest, freest way to do healing on yourself. But the more we clear out our shortcomings, our shadow, the better the world around us gets, because our vibrational frequency, our frequency gets higher, and that projects a better reality. And that's what's going on. That's what you're seeing, Susan. You're seeing the negative being taken out of these corporations. You know, he's cleaning the swamp in that respect. And that's because the people are raising their consciousness. So the
Mhm.
world around them starts to change. And that's the impact of what's going on here. It's not just about him as a businessman or him as a womanizer. There's a much, much bigger picture going on here that people need to consider before they start pointing the finger. And I say it to anyone out there, next time you're in company, listen to what people say about someone else, because we see the world as we are. We
Mhm.
project our own shadow onto other people. So if you're listening to someone, they're bad mouthing someone else, saying they're greedy or they're this or they're that, it gives you a good insight into that person themselves, because they're projecting onto other people their own shadow self. So I always, when I meet people at first, I'm very quiet. I listen to see what they say about people and what they say. Politics is a big thing at the moment, and as I say, I'm not into politics, but unfortunately I live in a world that is at the moment.
Mhm.
And I tend to trust my gut feeling on, what's right and what's not right. If you look at what Robert Kennedy's doing, the fact that he walked away from the Democrats and joined Trump says a lot. And trying to
I
clean
know,
up
and it's
food.
amazing. He's trying to clean up our food,
Yeah,
and people still hate him.
I know. It's like trying to protect your kids.
Trying to make us all be aware and look and see what's in these vaccines.
Yeah.
Like we've all just trusted that our government would do the right thing, and that it hasn't always happened that way. And so, yeah, we do need to know what's in our food. We need to know what's in our vaccines. We need to know what we're pumping, because there are some people that have a completely different agenda.
Yeah. There was a documentary on Netflix not that long ago called The Bleeding Edge. I don't know if you saw it.
Mm-mm.
Basically, somebody had sneaked a camera into the FDA when they were talking about this birth control coil. And it was basically about the size of a needle, and it had a little coil wrapped all the way around it. And it went in
Mhm.
the fallopian tubes. There was one for each tube. They cost $20 to make. They sell them for $4,000. And the guy, there was a secret camera in there, and the guy said his words to the effect of, "Oh, if the public knew that we were passing this, they would think we were crazy. But it's passed, it's approved." And basically, it goes into your fallopian tube, and your skin grows into the coil. You can't take it out without ripping your fallopian tubes to bits.
Mhm. Yeah, you
Yeah,
won't ever be able to have children again.
yeah, you
It's
can't.
supposed to be a birth control method.
And it's never been tested on humans. That's the other thing.
Mhm.
The same with hip replacements. There's about 6 different hip replacements now. They've been upgraded. So they approve one, and then the first one was poisoning people with metal toxicity.
Mhm.
So they updated that. But because it's been approved, the first one was approved. Any upgrades they do don't need approval. They're just
That's
automatically
right.
upgraded. And get this, not even tested on animals, these latest hip replacements. Never mind humans, they weren't even tested on chimps or monkeys or anything. So people are having big blocks of whatever put inside their body, and the human body isn't built to have stuff implanted into it. It's not. Anything
Yes.
not organic, the body's going to be rejecting. Doesn't matter whether it's plastic or whether it's titanium or whatever it is. It's just not built for it.
So Janine, while you brought that up, what's happening with the transgenders and prompting people, kids to transition, this is along the same lines, is it's mutilation at its finest. So it's not the first time it's happened, because what you just described, it's been happening for decades.
But that mutilation is, it's not, it's not just in that. We've had our talk about the transgender thing, guys at home. If you haven't heard that podcast, it's definitely worth listening to. But the mutilation has been going on for years. I mean, I remember the one time I've ever written to number 10 Downing Street, I was 18 years old, and I watched a documentary about female genital mutilation in certain cultures.
Culture.
And it's rife in the UK. There's a lot of people, Indian people in the UK. And I was just completely taken aback by this documentary about the hundreds of thousands of young girls that basically they call them the aunties in the family, get together, pin them down, no anesthetic, and they cut their clitoris off and they stitch their labia together. And they sew them up so they can't have sex. And then when they get married, the sex is forced onto them till they split open. The documentary was really shocking. These women are ruined for life. And it's all in the name of religion. We don't need to go down that road, but all in the name of religion, you know.
And that's how much of a cult it is. Like that right there demonstrates that no positive physical benefit, but to someone who believes in that particular religious, you know, when you have the other people in your family that are holding you down.
At 7 years old,
That's
one of the girls was 7 when they did it to her.
If you were holding my daughter or my granddaughter down, literally you would have to just put me out, because I would just go
Yeah.
ballistic on everyone in that room.
Yeah.
You know, this is not happening.
Yeah.
Like,
But this
I don't
is,
know how your heart could allow it. Like, regardless of your religion, how can your heart condition allow you to see someone whom you love so much go through something so horrific and just be there like it's nothing?
well,
I can't even comprehend that.
cultural starts off with the letter C-U-L-T.
yes.
There's a clue there, but there's a lot of stuff going on around the world. And there's, you know, even if you look at things like sexism, it's still rife on this planet. Sexism, racism, all of these things are still massive, massive problems in the world that need to be addressed. So what's going on now with all these changes and this raising of frequency, people at home need to understand that it is going to look worse out there before it gets better. Because it's like anything. If you've got a boil on your back, at some point it's going to pop and it's going to be nasty and sore and an open wound, and then it's going to heal. And that's what's going on in the world at the moment. So I know there's a lot of people out there that they're seeing all the doom and gloom, and they're scared, and they're worried about their future. The best place you can be is learning to meditate and just being in the moment, being in the present, taking one day at a time, and stay off the TV and the news, and stop buying magazines and newspapers and all this other garbage that program your consciousness. People don't even realize that they're being programmed. Television channels, information, programs into your
Programs.
conscious.
Yeah, we had to get the programs through the TV guide. I mean, it's been going on for my entire life. And
Yeah.
I'm so excited to where we've coiled all the way up, and now we're springing back in the opposite direction. And what is coming for us in humanity is going to be the most beautiful thing. Like, we are going to, and I feel so privileged to be alive at this point, because I get to see it. I get to see all the beautiful things that are coming from all this chaos. I know that seems scary to a lot of people, but it's moving, and
Yeah.
we're going to experience life in a way that we have never, ever experienced life. And abundance is, like, we're so used to being, money, 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 like, and I know everything, you can't do anything without money. You can't even eat, and all that's going to change. And it's just going to be wonderful. It's wonderful now. I mean, just to see that we've gotten to where we're at. And it's just going to progress for the better of humanity from this point forward.
Yeah, well, moving into a future with free energy is going to be coming, so the utility bills are going to be out the window. They're not going to be needed anymore.
Well, just healing.
Yeah.
People being able to heal through quantum energy. A lot of things are going to change.
Yeah, well, they have
The
already.
medical industry is going to change. It's beautiful.
Yeah, the complementary aspect of healthcare is being respected now, instead of people being called pseudoscience or quacks and things like that. With even like brilliant geniuses like what's his name, Sheldrake, talked about when he talked about morphic resonances, and he did a TED talk. So if you go on YouTube and look for banned TED talks, there's a lot of really good stuff on there, because basically if TED have banned it, it's worth watching.
Yeah.
Sheldrake talked about morphic resonance, and basically morphic resonance is like the plasma of memories in the just in the mass consciousness in the field. And the way he describes it is like the first crystal that ever grew from a rock, the crystal grows, it may, let's say that crystal took 1,000 years to grow, just picking a number, it may not be 1,000. But once it's grown, the very first one, it's left memories in the field of consciousness, which he calls morphic resonances, of how it grew. So, you know, every day, step by step, every nanosecond. So the next crystal that grows connects immediately with those memories, and it grows faster. Because
Wow.
now it's got like a blueprint to follow. And that's what we are. Basically, we're what's happening now is we're picking up on the morphic resonances of everything that's ever happened in our universe. So it's not just about what's going on Earth. So the morphic resonances of all the old wars, Civil War, Boer War, First World War, Second World War, you know, all of these morphic resonances are coming to the surface to be healed. So what we were talking about earlier, that we need to heal our ancestral past, and that's what's going on. So we're picking up on those morphic resonances, and this is why it's trying to propagate war again in the physical reality based on those energies. So that's what, you know, we work on things like that in my Patreon channel, like clearing the memories of war out of your consciousness, and, you know, out of the grid of the planet and stuff like that. Even clearing the energies of old earthquakes and volcanoes and floods, and all of the devastation that brought has left morphic resonances in the atmosphere and in the grids, you know, in the grids of the planet, and they're being cleaned out at the moment. So this is, it's not just about humans raising their frequency. The frequency of the earth is changing. The frequency of the universe is changing as a result.
And those are the kind of things that our children, when they, you know, when they get to a certain age, those are the type of things that they need to be learning in school.
Yeah.
You know, they need to be exposed to it.
They need to be taught basic self-healing. Like, I remember when my son was about 10 or 11 and he had a sore throat, and I said, come and sit on my lap a minute, son. So close your eyes and just take a few deep breaths and just relax. I said, now I want you to imagine your throat as something that you can see that isn't your body. And he said, okay, it looks like a road, Mom. I said, okay, and what colour is it? He said, it's red. I said, right, and if you want to clear that off, wash that off, and you could use anything you wanted, what would you use? He said, a fire hose, you know, like a fire engine's hose. I said, okay, so imagine you got a fireman's hose, and you just blast that road, blast all the red off it with your hose in your mind until it looks clean. And he did it. And he got back up, and I said, how's your throat? And he said, it's all right. So, you know, this is a 10 or 11-year-old child that could be taught stuff like this in school, just to take, when you feel that red on the road was anger. He was angry about something. The colour of anger is red. So that's why it was stuck in his throat. People that have thyroid problems is quite often unresolved anger in the thyroid gland as well. Obviously, you know, there's iodine deficiencies and stuff like that, but we tend to store anger in our throat and in our liver. And that was the colour of it. But even, you know, stuff like this, kids are smart. They're good at visualising. They're easier to heal than people because they don't ask too many questions. They're not stuck in their male brain wanting to know all the logistics and the physics and the science of how it all works. Just do it. You know, just, you know, it works. Why do you, it's like you get in your car. I don't need to know how a combustion engine works and what the pistons do and everything else. And drive the car. Just drive the car. You know? Overanalysis leads to paralysis is one of my sayings. Sometimes you can ask too many questions instead of just getting on with it and getting the job done. Okay, guys, anything else you'd like to share today? You've got anything else you want to bring to the floor?
Just what we started off with our straw man. And if our listeners would like to take a look at Bibi Bacchus's interviews, I think that they're going to be wowed, and it's going to set them on a path where they cannot look back, because once you see the information, there's no unseeing it. And then you start to realize, like, you know, ways that you can slowly become sovereign and take the steps as well. And it's pretty stunning. For some people, I've heard that my friend Monica, her boyfriend in Salmon Arm, he's completely sovereign. Took him 20 years though, but I believe that it doesn't have to take that long, but
Yeah.
it is available to us. And sometimes when people are sovereign, they want to stay sovereign and they keep quiet and off the grid, right?
Yeah.
And then there's others that like to teach and help other people. And so after you see the information, I think that you'll be grateful that you did take a look at it rather than not be aware of it, because it definitely will change things for us as we continue on with our life here on planet Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that I think that over time we will start seeing a lot more of that as well. And eventually everyone will become sovereign.
Yes.
We're, getting rid of this maritime law.
Lots
Yeah.
of evidence of that. There's lots of
Yes.
evidence of that. And
Yes.
so it is, we're fortunate that there are many great people that will probably never know who their names are, who they are in the background that are helping us to become sovereign right now.
Absolutely.
There are movies out there as well. Which one did I watch? It's just come into my mind. Rose Island. Has anyone seen Rose Island?
No.
It's about a guy that builds like an island, like an oil rig. I know it was something like 5 or 10 miles offshore, and it becomes sovereign because it's not under jurisdiction of land.
I've seen something on that.
It's a
Okay,
true
go ahead.
story, and so it parties on it and all this lot. Big deal. But the government, they went after him and basically extended the distance to 12 miles out from land instead of 6 miles or whatever it was. And they basically treated him like he was a terrorist and were shooting the place down. It's a good movie. That's a good one to watch, guys. You know, I'm into movies,
Yes.
especially ones that educate. Rose Island is a good movie. The other great movie that's on, I think it's on Netflix, is called Bank of Dave. Have you seen that?
Bank of Dave.
Dave, D-A-V-E. It's a true story about a northerner in the UK, northern guy who was quite well off, just a hard-working man in working class place, and he started lending money to people and decided that he was going to become a bank, and how the processes to go through that so that he could be the bank for his community. And they had to apply for these rules and regulations, red tape, blah, blah, blah. They brought him through and said, right, you can do it, but you've got to put 12 million in the bank to start it off. Well, he didn't have 12 million. He only had 2 million or something like that. So the people, rallied round, and I won't tell you what happened, but it's a really good movie. And there's going to be people out there that might be in a position to be starting up doing the same thing for their own communities.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I just saw that like a couple days ago, where there is a bank that started by Main Street, which is not like Wall Street, and it's called Old Glory Bank, oldglorybank.com in the States. And check it out.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's a FDIC insured nationwide online bank that offers personal and business banking cards, credit cards, and life insurance options. It stands with you against cancel culture. And so, yeah, definitely worth checking out. So that was on, and even the people that started it, they were on February 5th of this year, were invited to testify at the Senate Banking Committee hearing about the alarming reality of debanking. So these people, like, it's good to have this website and what they're doing. Keep an eye on it. Let's see what's happening there. But again, it's for the people, which is, what we want to see. And just right what you had mentioned, Janine, it's brilliant.
Yeah. They're great. They're great movies and worth watching. They may inspire somebody to do something else, and inspire other people to do it. Because if Dave can do it, you can do it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there's so many
Exactly.
things going on behind the scenes we have no idea about that are just going to make life wonderful and
Yes.
better for
Yeah.
everyone. For everyone.
Yeah.
Based on what Susan just said, we have Mr. T that says you're going to have more money than what you know what to do with. And that was kind of along the lines what we've known for a handful of years now. is that it's going to be swinging in the favor of the people. And
Mhm.
now he's, I think this year, next year, going to be really prime evidence of that happening.
I've heard that they've sold our birth certificates over and over and over and over, but they have benefited from the interest, and that the interest is supposed to come back to the people for the
Yes.
fact that they took our straw man birth certificate and used it as chattel and sold it over and over, actually to England, and that there was interest accrued in that, and it's supposed to go back to the people. So we'll see. There's a
Fantastic.
lot of
Yeah.
information.
And here's a little bit more of information for people at home that have stayed with us till the end of the show. Your birth certificate is stored in a spiritual library known as your Akashic records, right? Also, every loan you've ever had, your mortgage, any documents like that you've ever signed, are also, there's a spiritual level to all of this. They're stored in your Akashic records. So they're like an energetic morphic resonance imprint of all of this stuff. There is a course on my website to go into your Akashic records. Once you know how to go into your Akashic records, you can go into your Akashic records, or you can come and do it with me, book a session with me, and you can cancel these in your Akashic records. So they no longer, it's like deleting the software program in your computer to that specific thing. So if you go into your Akashic records, you delete, mortgage loans, credit card loans, all of these bits of paper in your Akashic records, that has a really positive effect on your life, because there's no spiritual energy keeping those things alive in your reality. So this is how important learning about your spiritual self is, because your
Yeah.
spiritual self is the software in the machine of not only your physical health, but your reality experience as well. And there is stuff in your Akashic records that can be holding you back in this life, like things like bills of sale. Maybe you were a slave in a past life, and you're with someone in this life and you just can't get away from them, and they treat you like a slave because they owned you in a past life. And you go into your Akashic records, you cancel that bill of sale, burn and cancel it. There is a disconnect with the person in this life would allow you to move on. So things like that are also related to your monetary stuff in this lifetime. It's really important to delete in your Akashic records your birth certificate. Okay,
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
It
Yes.
is interesting stuff. Thank you, Janine, for sharing that, because the way that it's tied, with the Akashic records and everything. And don't you have kind of like a course, or what do you have offering that?
Yeah,
You have something.
on my website for $99 on how to access your Akashic records and cancel vows, pacts, bonds, contracts, black magic, curses, spells. All these kind of things are real. People have been using black magic on this planet for centuries, probably millennia.
And that also goes back to like generational stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah.
you can go in there and you can cancel stuff that's going back centuries that is in there. You can go and investigate. People get things back from in there as well, like pieces of them from other lifetimes that may be taken and stuff like that. All sorts of things in there. So it's a really useful tool to have. And that's a good place to end the show today. Thanks for joining us at home, everyone, and we will see you next time on Talking Timelines. Bye.
Bye.
Disclaimer: the content in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only. The views, opinions, and information shared do not necessarily represent those of the hosts, but is provided for additional perspectives. None of the hosts are medical professionals, so we do not dispense medical advice. Please consult your healthcare professional for any health-related issues. And thank you for listening to Talking Timelines.